Panacea 360, How One Hospital Turned Fear into Courage. Madhav Sharan still remembered the first night he slept in his office at Panacea Hospital, Varanasi. The city outside was alive in its usual way, temple bells in the distance, the soft hum of autos, the smell of chai from a late-night stall. But inside the hospital building, the corridors felt heavy. Not because of illness alone, but because of something he could almost touch: fear. Fear in the eyes of patients. Fear in the shoulders of nurses. Fear in the hesitant voice of young doctors explaining risks they themselves were not fully confident about. Panacea Hospital prided itself on being a complete care center, but Madhav knew a hard truth: buildings, machines, and logos do not heal people. People heal people. And right now his people were tired, anxious, and quietly losing faith in themselves. He stared at the whiteboard in his office, filled with numbers: admissions, discharges, average length of stay, revenue, infection rates. Important? Yes. But nothing on that board told him if a patient felt genuinely cared for, if a nurse felt proud of her work, if a junior doctor felt safe to say, "I don't know, but I will find out." What Panacea needed, Madhav thought, was a new story. A story where fear became fuel, where every person, not only doctors, became part of healing. That night he picked up a marker and wrote 3 words at the top of the board: Panacea Story 360 degrees. He did not yet know what that meant, but he would soon. #1. The day of the fall, the story truly began on a hot June afternoon. A man in his 50s, Ramesh Yadav, was carried into the emergency department. He had collapsed at his shop in the narrow lanes near a sea god. By the time he reached Panacea, he was gasping, drenched in sweat, his family shouting, "Sans nahi a rahi, Dr. Saab." The ER was busy as usual. A junior resident, Dr. Priya, rushed to the stretcher. Her heart raced. She had been on duty for 10 hours, had eaten only a biscuit and chai. She quickly took vitals: blood pressure low, pulse racing, oxygen saturation falling. Possible acute coronary syndrome with pulmonary edema, she thought. Or maybe massive PE? What if I missed something? The fear in her chest felt louder than the monitor beeping. She looked up and saw the patient's wife, Meena, clutching a small cloth bag, eyes full of desperation. Next to her stood their teenage son, Ankit, staring at his father's face as if trying to memorize it. For a second, Priya froze. What if I make a mistake? What if he dies? What if the family blames me? Behind that fear was another. What if the seniors think I am incompetent? She took a breath, almost by accident, and remembered something Madhav had said in a recent meeting: fear is not your enemy. Fear is your coach. Listen to it. It is telling you that this moment matters. Let it sharpen you, not paralyze you. She looked again at the ECG elevation. No time to waste. Priya's voice, surprisingly steady now, cut through the chaos. Activate code STEMI, call cardiology. Start oxygen, nitrates, antiplatelets. Prepare for immediate transfer to cath lab. Her hands moved faster, but her mind felt clearer. Fear was still there, but now it was like a strict but caring teacher standing behind her, saying, "Stay alert, stay present. This man's life needs all of you." Within minutes, the team moved Ramesh to the cath lab, where Dr. Arjun, the interventional cardiologist, took over. A blocked artery, a stent, swift medications. The procedure went smoothly, almost textbook. The next day, when Ramesh opened his eyes, the first face he saw was his son's. The second was Dr. Priya's. "Doctor," he whispered, "am I safe?" "You are with us," she said, smiling. "And we are not going anywhere." What Priya did not realize then was that this one case would become a pillar of Panacea's new story. #2. The round table of fear. 2 weeks later, Madhav called a special meeting. But this was not in the usual conference room with stiff chairs and a long formal table. Instead, he booked the small education hall on the top floor. He ordered samosas and chai, asked the housekeeping team to place chairs in a circle, and wrote on the board, "Fear stories, only truth allowed." When the staff walked in, there was confusion. "Is this a training?" a nurse asked. "Will there be slides?" a technician joked. Madhav shook his head. "No slides, no exam. Only your stories. I want to understand, where does fear live in Panacea?" Silence, Finally, Sister Lakshmi, a senior nurse from ICU, spoke first. I have worked in this hospital for 12 years, she said. I am not scared of critical patients. I am scared of making one mistake on a busy night and being blamed for everything. Sometimes I do not speak up when I see a small issue because I fear people will say, Tam hai sabs zyada bolti ho. That fear keeps me quiet. Across the circle, a young ward boy Imran added, I am scared when I shift patients alone on the stretcher. If something goes wrong on the way, everyone looks at me as if I have done some crime. So I move fast, but my hands shake. Then it was Dr. Priya's turn. She shared the story of Ramesh Yadav, the racing heartbeat, the doubt, the moment she froze, and how recalling Madhav's words helped her use fear as a signal, not a stop sign. I realized she said that fear was telling me, this is important. Pay attention, ask for help if you need it. It was not telling me to run away. One by one, people began to speak. The radiology technician afraid of missing a small lesion. The pharmacist worried about drugs going out of stock in the night. The receptionist who felt powerless when angry relatives shouted at her. Madhav listened quietly, taking notes. At the end, he stood up. Thank you, he said. Today, Panacea became more honest. And honest hospitals heal better. He then shared his vision for Panacea 360 degrees, 360-degree care, patient, family, staff, and community all included. 360-degree courage, admitting fear, learning from it, and acting despite it. 360-degree communication, no silent suffering, no unspoken doubts. The goal, he said, is simple. Every person who enters this building, whether as patient, relative, staff, or student, should feel a little less alone and a little more brave than when they came in. To make this more than words, he proposed something unusual. Every month, one real story from Panacea would be collected, written simply, and shared across the hospital on notice boards, WhatsApp groups, and morning huddles. Not just success stories, but learning stories. Because he said, a hospital that can learn from its own stories is a hospital that will never stop improving. They decided to start with Ramesh Yadav. #3. Ramesh's room, Ramesh's journey after the procedure was not a straight line. He was stable, but diabetes, mild kidney dysfunction, and years of ignoring health could not be erased overnight. On the third day, he argued with the dietitian. Yes, sab, boiled kana main nahi ka sakta, he complained. I've eaten namkeen and kachori all my life. I'm fine, see? Your stent is good. Why so much drama? His wife Meena looked anxious. She had watched the monitors, the wires, the rushing staff. She had seen her husband's face when the pain had been at its peak, eyes wide, breath struggling. Ramesh ji, she said softly, do you remember how you were that evening? He avoided her eyes. Ho gaya ab, don't scare me again. The nurse on duty that day was Ananya, new to the ward but quick to observe. She saw a man whose biggest fear was not death, but change. For Ramesh, food was joy, social life, identity. To him, healthy eating sounded like losing his entire way of living. That afternoon, Madhav visited the ward for his routine walkthrough. He believed in leading with presence, not just emails. He stepped into Ramesh's room, introduced himself, and asked, what is the most frightening part of this whole experience for you? Ramesh thought for a moment. Honestly, doctor, he said, I'm more scared of living like a patient than of dying like a man who ate what he liked. I don't want to spend my remaining years counting chapatis and milligrams. Madhav smiled. What if, he asked, we rewrite what a patient means? He pulled up a chair. Right now you see two options, carefree life with kakoris and early death, or miserable life with boiled food and long survival. But life is rarely that simple. What if there is a third path? Ramesh raised an eyebrow. Third path? Yes, Madhav said. What if your heart attack is not only a warning but also a coach pushing you to design a better game? Not stop everything you love, but learn to love in a smarter way. A way that lets you dance at your son's wedding, play with your future grandchildren, and still enjoy the occasional treat. He continued, at Panacea, we don't only treat your arteries, we treat your story. Let us help you write a version where health and happiness are not enemies. Something softened in Ramesh's face. What does that third path look like? He asked slowly. Madhav turned to nurse Ananya. You have a talent for explaining things simply. Why don't you and our dietitian make a 1-week Ramesh special plan, not punishment, but partnership? Include the flavors he loves, but with some smart swaps. And one small festival day treat per week, agreed in advance. Ramesh laughed. If you promise I can eat jalabai sometimes, maybe I will listen. Done, Ananya said, smiling. But we will make that jalabai work hard to earn its place. For the next few days, Ananya and the dietitian worked closely with Meena as well, teaching her how to cook tasty yet heart-friendly versions of their favorite dishes. They didn't just hand over a printed diet chart, they walked through the kitchen routine, the market list, the family habits. By discharge day, Ramesh wasn't a perfect patient, but he was a changed one. He had felt something unusual, a hospital that was not scolding him, but walking with him. #4. The mirror of Panacea. While Ramesh's story unfolded, another journey was happening within the staff. As part of Panacea 360 degrees, Madhav introduced mirror meetings once a month. In these sessions, a case would be discussed not only clinically, but emotionally and ethically. What did we do well? Where did fear stop us from speaking? Where did ego override empathy? Where did systems fail? One meeting was about an elderly woman, Ammaji, who had been admitted with pneumonia. Her son, a software engineer in Bengaluru, had arrived late and was upset. He felt the staff were not giving enough updates. Voices had risen at midnight near the nurses' station. In the mirror meeting, the story emerged from all angles. The night nurse Kiran shared how she had felt cornered by the son's questions. He kept asking, if something happens to my mother, will you take responsibility? I felt attacked, so I spoke less, not more. The son, contacted later for feedback, confessed he was terrified of losing his mother. I didn't know how to say, I am scared. So instead I said, you people are careless. It was easier to be angry than vulnerable. Listening to this, Madhav said, we often meet each other's fear in its worst disguise, anger, arrogance, withdrawal. What if we train ourselves to look for the fear behind the mask? From this case, Panacea introduced a simple but powerful practice. At admission, especially for high-risk patients, a nurse or counselor would ask one question to the family member. What are you most worried about right now? The answers were eye-opening. I'm scared we won't be able to afford this. I'm scared I signed the wrong consent form. I'm scared my father will die thinking I abandoned him. These fears didn't show in lab reports, but they affected everything: cooperation, trust, compliance with treatment. Panacea started keeping a small fear note in the file, 1 or 2 lines summarizing the family's biggest concern. During rounds, doctors took a minute to address it. We will keep costs transparent. We will explain every major step in simple language. We will make sure you get enough time with your father. Over time, the tension in corridors reduced. Arguments didn't vanish, but they belonged to a calmer, more human environment. #5. When the healer needs healing one evening, just as the outpatient department was closing, a young nurse named Ritu fainted near the pharmacy. She was quickly attended to, vitals, glucose, ECG, all checked. Physically, she was fine, just exhausted and dehydrated. But Madhav noticed the tears in her eyes as she lay on the stretcher. He pulled a curtain for privacy and asked, what's really happening, Ritu? She hesitated, then spoke in a rush. I joined Panacea because I wanted to help people. But lately I feel like a machine, shift after shift, endless relatives, constant pressure not to make mistakes. When I go home, I am too tired to talk to my own family. I feel guilty even asking for a day off. Today, when a patient's relative shouted at me, I suddenly felt that I can't do this anymore. Then everything went black. Madhav listened carefully. This was not just Ritu's story. It was the story of healthcare workers across the world. He said gently, Panacea 360 degrees means the circle of care must include you too. If healers are broken, how will healing happen? The next week, he announced a new initiative, Care for the Caregiver. It included a small counseling room near the staff area where anyone could walk in for 15 minutes and talk to a psychologist without prior appointment. Short pause rituals at the start of each shift, 2 minutes of breathing together, silently or with a simple line. We are here to serve and we are here to support each other. A confidential channel where staff could report burnout, workload issues, or emotional distress without fear of punishment. The goal was support, not scrutiny. At first, people were skeptical. We don't have time for all this, some said. But gradually, nurses like Ritu started using the counseling room after particularly hard cases. Junior doctors found comfort in sharing their doubts anonymously and receiving guidance. The small pause ritual at shift change became surprisingly popular. It felt like a mini reset. One day during a pause ritual, Ritu said something that made everyone smile. Earlier, I thought courage at work meant never feeling tired, never crying, never asking for help. Now I realize courage is being honest about my limits and still choosing to show up with heart. That was exactly the spirit Madhav hoped Panacea 360 degrees would nurture. #6. The day of return 3 months after his heart attack, Ramesh walked back into Panacea Hospital, but this time not on a stretcher. He wore a neatly ironed kurta, a lighter step, and a proud smile. With him were Meena and Ankit carrying a box. He went to the nurses' station of the cardiac ward. "Where is Sister Ananya?" he asked. When Ananya came out, Ramesh opened the box. Inside were small packets of roasted chana and homemade low-sugar laddus. "Dr. Saab told me you are the boss of my third path," he said, grinning. "So I brought proof." He showed his blood reports. Lipids improved. Blood sugar better controlled. Blood pressure stable. "I still miss my old kakoris," he admitted. "But now I eat them guilt-free on festival days with planning. The rest of the time, I actually like my new food. It makes me feel lighter. I can climb the stairs at home without panting." Meena added, "And we walk together on the terrace every evening. We talk more now than in the last 10 years. Madhav, who happened to be passing by, joined them. Ramesh shook his hand. "I thought hospital stories end when the bill is paid," he said. "But my story started here." Ankit, shy but determined, spoke up. "Sir, I want to become a physiotherapist or maybe a dietitian. Earlier, I wanted to do just any job with good salary. But now I want to work in health like all of you." I saw what difference it made. Madhav felt a quiet satisfaction. This was the hidden ripple of Panacea 360 degrees. Health inspiring health. Courage inspiring courage. #7. Panacea 360, the new culture over the next year. Panacea Hospital slowly transformed, not through a single miracle, but through hundreds of small acts guided by their news story. Morning huddles with stories every morning. One department shared a real short story of a near miss caught by a vigilant nurse, a difficult conversation that turned into trust, a mistake owned and corrected. No one was shamed, the focus was learning. The staff began to look forward to these stories more than to any motivational poster. Wall of gratitude near the OPD entrance, a simple soft board held handwritten notes from patients and relatives. "Thank you, housekeeping Bia, for changing the bed sheets so gently when my father was in pain. Thank you, lab technician Didi, for explaining why repeated tests were needed." Reading these, staff realized that even small gestures were noticed and valued. Fear as feedback instead of hiding fear, staff were encouraged to say, "I feel uncertain about this step, especially in ICUs and OT." This led to better checklists, clearer protocols, and fewer errors. Fear was no longer a private shame. It was a shared signal to pause and strengthen the system. Community clinics Panacea started monthly health camps in nearby neighborhoods. The theme was from panic to plan. People were taught how to recognize warning signs, when to seek immediate care, how to manage chronic diseases, and how to ask questions without feeling small. Many who attended later came to the hospital early in their illness, avoiding emergencies. Student rounds, medical and nursing students were invited to see not just the disease, but the story around it. During rounds, they were asked, "What do you think this patient fears most? What does the family fear? What does the nurse in this case fear?" It trained them to see healthcare as a human drama, not just a list of diagnoses. #8. The night of the storm, one night during the monsoon, a sudden storm hit Varanasi. Trees fell. Power lines snapped. Several hospitals in the area faced short circuits and power cuts. Panacea's generators kicked in, but there was a brief, terrifying 30-second blackout. In the ICU, ventilators beeped in alarm as they switched over. In the OT, a surgeon paused mid-procedure. In the maternity ward, a woman screamed as thunder shook the windows. For a moment, fear exploded everywhere. But something was different now. The staff had practiced emergency drills, but more importantly, they had practiced staying present in fear. The ICU nurses spoke calmly to each other, checking each monitor. The OT team moved in practiced rhythm. Housekeeping staff, trained in basic emergency roles, guided relatives away from corridors without shouting. In the maternity ward, it was Ritu, the same nurse who had fainted months ago, who knelt beside the laboring woman and said, "Didi, I am here. Storm will come and go, but your baby is coming with full courage. Let us welcome him together." Within minutes, the hospital stabilized. No patient suffered harm. Later, it would be recorded as one more successful handling of a power disruption. But for Madhav, that night proved something deeper. When fear is acknowledged, trained, and shared, it can become a powerful ally. He stood on the terrace after the storm passed, watching the lights of the city reflect on the wet streets, and thought, Panacea 360 degrees is not a project. It is a way of seeing. A way where every crisis can become a classroom, every mistake a mirror, every patient a teacher, and every staff member a storyteller. #9. The story that never ends. Months later, a young journalist visited Panacea to write an article about hospitals transforming healthcare culture. She asked Madhav, "What is the secret of Panacea's change? Is it technology? Is it protocols?" He smiled. Technology helps. Protocols are essential. But our true secret is stories. We listen to them, we learn from them, and we let them change us. Stories, she repeated, intrigued. "Yes," he said. The story of a junior doctor who acted with courage despite fear. The story of a shopkeeper who chooses the third path after a heart attack. The story of a nurse who realizes that to care for others, she must care for herself. These stories travel from ward to ward, shift to shift. They remind us why we are here. The journalist looked around. At the receptionist patiently explaining forms, at the security guard helping an elderly man to the lift, at a group of interns gathered around a senior physician as he gently showed them how to examine a patient. "It feels," she said slowly, "like this hospital is breathing." Madhav chuckled. "We still have problems. We still have bad days. But yes, Panacea is breathing. And as long as we keep listening to fear as a coach and to stories as guides, I believe we will keep healing not just bodies, but lives." He paused, then added, "The courageous mind is not a concept for an audiobook alone. It is something we practice here every day in these corridors with real people who are afraid but choose to act anyway." As the journalist left, she read the line painted above the main entrance, a line Madhav had chosen after that very first night in his office. Panacea, where fear enters as a patient and walks out as courage. And somewhere inside, in a ward filled with quiet beeping and soft footsteps, another new story was beginning, one that would soon join the growing circle of Panacea 360 degrees, the never-ending story of how a hospital, its people, and its city learned to dance with the unknown together.